Hello, Villasenor. How you going?
Hey Marty, how are you?
You must get sick of people botching your name. So yeah, from Mexico City, Ketogains legend. So thanks for joining today to have a chat. So
Always eager to talk to you, Marty. We
thanks so much.
basically chat almost all the time via message anyway,
Yeah,
but
yeah. We always talk a lot. So we thought we'd share and basically have a public chat and share a bunch of thoughts. So yeah. So background, I massively appreciate your influence. You've been a bit of a mentor, hero, friend, such an education over the years. And through this journey, I suppose we've all taken a bit of a journey, and you've been on it longer than most in low carb nutrition. But yeah, a few years ago, I did the Ketogains boot camp, and I thought I knew a lot. And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of things came together, and weight loss and muscle gain, and feeling a whole lot better. So it's been a real buzz. So yeah. I suppose to give everybody some background to who is Villasenor, I dragged up some photos from a chat we did last week where you shared these, and yeah, you've been on your own journey from being the typical fat kid, which I was, and I suppose a lot of us were, following the standard diet, to your Michael Jackson semi-anorexic phase, as you called it, and then trying to work to become He-Man was your hero. So yeah, it's a pretty cool journey, pretty cool hero's journey, literally. So how long have you been doing this for? It's like 20 years since you started digging into ketogenic diet and low carb nutrition.
yeah, approximately it was around 2000, very much when I started playing with ketogenic diets, and it was just I had hit very much my lowest point in nutrition. Very much like the abridged version of what happened to me is, yeah, I was chubby, overweight as a kid. I started strength training as a way to improve my physique, and I was very bad in all sports. So what I found is that, okay, I didn't like football, soccer. I didn't like any team sports, but I sort of was strong, and so I started practicing that on my own and learning by myself. Remember, just go back like 40 years, we didn't have internet. We just had like muscle and fitness magazines, and we just had Arnold movies and He-Man, like you said. So like I tried to be that, doing things on my own, but I probably took it too far in regards to nutrition. Tried different things and ended up anorexic because one thing leads to the other. I was just getting in college, in between stress and girlfriends or girls, and studying and things like that. Just like didn't have time for nothing, and I don't recall exactly how I ended there, but I recall that I didn't have to prepare food or eat. And then how what happens with fasting, right? Probably the 1 or 2 days are difficult, but you're super busy doing things you don't notice. And then I found out that it wasn't hungry, and it was like normal for me to just have one meal or two a day, but very little food.
Mm.
I slept all through to the day, didn't have energy to do anything. I actually left strength training. I just did a little bit of cardio, and I ended up weighing 48 kilos, which is horrible. My hair started to fall off a lot, and I think I've already told this story. But my lowest point was when I took a pair of jeans and I put them on, and they were super short, very much like, yeah, the low end of the jeans were about to my knee, and it was like, what happened? And I checked them, and they were my little brother's jeans. Like he was like 7 or 8 years at the time. So
Well,
it's like, yeah, little kitty jeans, and they fit perfectly on my waist. And it was like, I'm gonna kill myself. This is not something that, like, I've been training and wanting fat loss, but I took it too far. I didn't look like I wanted to look when I reached that weight. So
mm,
I was at the college at the time, and I started to go to nutrition classes that were, I had friends that studied nutrition, and I decided just to drop in and see what they were teaching and so on. And looking also at some uh, internet forums, because at that time, 2000, you already could get into internet at college.
mm,
And me being a nerd, I was one of the first to get an email and everything like that. And I don't recall how I stumbled into bodybuilding forums, mostly because probably that was what I was looking for, and started chatting with people that were doing prep uh, for a show. And the trick was very much eat a low carb diet,
Mm.
a version of a ketogenic diet. That's probably the first time I heard of it. And you can maintain muscle and look ripped, but you shouldn't do it forever, just for a while. And started doing that, and it very much resonated with how I like to eat, and was very or fairly easy for me to follow. Started buying books about it, reading more about it, studying more about it, and it just sort of clicked and became my way of life.
Mm. And you've been basically doing that for the last 20 years or so, and continually learning.
Modifications, and probably, as you know, and chatted with me, we've had different interpretations as it goes along, and change a lot of how we think and apply. Because one thing is grabbing the textbook definition, but the other is actually how you do that in free living conditions, right? How you manage with life and events and going out to restaurants, or how you make it a little bit different when you're training and you also want to gain, versus the traditional just loose idea of keto diets, or that protein should be kept super low, but that's contrary to building muscle and things like that, that people get, they get married to a definition, and they're way too afraid to change. Why? Because in my head, what I've seen is that they are afraid of, or more so, they don't understand the complexities of it. So it's very much like when you teach someone to subtract or add, and usually they just learn that a combination of numbers give you certain results, but they don't understand the whys.
Yeah.
Right.
I suppose that's what we wanted to talk about a bit about today is, you said, hey, we should get on and talk about what a healthy low carb or keto diet is. So I just wanted to just go through your qualifications. Every time you post something on Facebook, you got a new freaking qualification from, you started doing marketing, precision nutrition, sports science, you're a lecturer for Henselman's, CrossFit, primal coach, metabolic flexibility, kicked off Ketogains, which has now got 118,000 members, which is just insane. So, and now you're studying Bachelor of Nutrition, basically to be a certified nutritionist. Is that right?
Yeah, so basically, so I've studied nutrition by my own for the last probably 20 years as well. I've got certifications and degrees, and mostly as a certified nutritionist, more geared toward sports nutrition. The missing piece, especially in Mexico, very much like anywhere in the world, I often, participate and get invited to give seminars on universities and college, and so. But it's mostly like a thing of ego. I want to have the actual degree in Mexico, which is where I live, to be like a registered dietitian. So not to get a little bit of pushback, because there's always, but you are not an RD, but you are not like I probably know a little bit more than you in this area. I've never said that I know everything, but I love studying, especially things related to this area of nutrition, and also related to strength training. So this was just the next logical thing. And now with COVID, that I have more time to be like, I am actually more busy now, but I thought it was a good idea at the time. And with let's say that the degree was open to do online, which was not a year before. So I basically said, just let's do it.
I joked you should be a senior lecturer in the course, but anyway. So to give some background on ketogenic low carb diets, maybe we should touch on the history of keto, and like it's a word that means so many different things to so many different people. And I suppose way back it started 1909 for the treatment of epilepsy, and has gone on to Alzheimer's and dementia, and that's sort of a therapeutic ketogenic diet versus a diet for weight loss and improved metabolic health and diabetes reversal, etc. So they just want to touch on the history of that and how that's changed from, I suppose, your learning in learning Lyle McDonald and the anabolic diet and the like back when you started learning it as well?
Mm-hmm. So, well, as I said before, one of the first, I think the actual first book that I read, more so regarding a ketogenic diet per se, is Lyle McDonald's The Ketogenic Diet. I started with that along with another book called Bodily, which is very much in what the actual ketogenic diet book was inspired, which are different interpretations of the same studies. It's very much how to do a ketogenic diet, but more so with the goal of maintaining lean mass or actually increasing it. But the actual book, The Ketogenic Diet by Lyle McDonald, goes much more in depth because it explains all the biochemistry and also the history of and different applications of the ketogenic diet. So very much for you to understand how to apply a ketogenic diet towards different endeavors, you should understand first the actual traditional application, and also, of course, the biochemistry, which is, in my eyes, super important because, as I said before, if you understand the basics, then you can modify it a little bit for different objectives or goals.
Yeah, biochem is something that just blows my mind, and people like Mike Julian, just he's incredible understanding of how that works. I think he's taught both of us so much, and all the things he said 3 years ago, you sort of have this memory and go, I understand what he meant now. It all makes sense, and it's a lot of the foundation of my learning. And so shout out to Mike for being an incredible air conditioning specialist who went down the rabbit hole of biochem and taught us a whole lot. So the difference between a therapeutic ketogenic diet and a keto diet for bodybuilding or fat loss, diabetes reversal, how do they differ in terms of goals, ketones, protein, carbs, etc.?
Well, here's a very basic interpretation. Now, where has the textbook definition, and this is, I think, this where mostly the disconnect comes from. A ketogenic diet, in general terms, if you look at it from various studies, it is defined as a diet where energy is mostly derived from fat, and they usually explain this by percentages. And they aim or suggest a higher than 65, mostly 70% of the energy coming from fat. So and then, of course, carbs below 5% and the rest protein. So 25 protein, 5 carbs, and the rest fat, which again, 65, 70. What happens is, if you are a layperson or, again, don't understand the whole topic, then you think, okay, everything that I eat, should keep a balance of 70% fat, 20% protein or 25% protein, and then 5 carbs. And then you have some people that think that calories don't matter as long as you keep this ratio. Or another big fail, which it's funny for me because Dr. Finney and Dr. Bullock actually said what I'm going to say, but people, they say they've read the books, but when you ask certain questions, you realize that they didn't really read them, or they just
didn't understand them.
When we talk about the energy ratio, which I just said, that includes the complete energy that your body has, that your body can tap into, and thus it includes both your body fat as well.
Yeah.
And this is why Dr. Ted Naiman, I think he created this phrase, I don't recall if 3 or 4 years ago, but you know it very well. If your body is high fat, all you need is a low carb. And this phrase got Ted and me as well, and probably you, excommunicated from a lot of ketogenic groups, because people don't understand that if you have a lot of body fat in your body, you don't need to eat a lot of body fat. The thing is, you enter and maintain ketosis mostly by reducing your carbohydrate intake. That's it. You don't need to eat high fat.
And all the fat energy coming from your body, you don't need to come at it from your diet.
The point is, you can eat high fat, and you will increase fat burning. But also another disconnect. People think that fat burning means burning your own fat. No, fat burning just means the substrate utilization, what type of energy you will be using most of the time. So again, yeah, and this is a sort of a direct quote from Dr. Finney. Do you want to burn the fat from your body fat, from your body, or from your plate? And I think you said it as well.
Yeah.
So it's just how you understand things. Yeah, eating a little bit more fat along with protein may make your meals more satiating, but it doesn't mean that you will necessarily burn more of your own body fat. So
if you're an athlete and you're a growing kid, you need more dietary fat to fuel the energy and growth. But if you're one of the many people who are overweight and got plenty of body fat to lose, then you want to dial back the dietary fat. So that is something that causes so much confusion and arguments.
That's
spend so much time online and going round and round.
But then again, some people that we've all interacted with, they go and say, but you shouldn't be eating zero fat. And it's like, we're not saying to eat zero fat. We are saying that you should not increase or eat a lot of fat. I'm not saying to eat zero fat. We never said that. We're just saying to reduce your fat intake to a point. What point? That's up to you to decide, whereas you want faster rate of fat loss or you want a more steady but slower rate, etc., etc. That's something for you to decide or apply depending on your own context and goals, but it's not zero fat. And then also,
our analysis shows that all nutrient density aligns with a lower carb diet that's got less processed carbohydrate and higher protein. So I think that's one of the reasons why a keto diet works so well, is that you eliminate all the refined grains and sugars, and people's blood sugars drop, and they're improving the nutrient density and potentially increasing satiety due to more protein, and they get these amazing results. But then they think, oh, it's the fat, so I'll aim for more dietary fat, and then go, I've stalled, but I need high ketones, and it's just such a misconstrued area. So I suppose it's something we've both been frustrated with for a while.
Yeah, and also, well, we'll probably get into that later, but the chasing ketones and things like that, right?
Yeah. So protein, it's highly maligned, and from a bodybuilding perspective, you need protein to build muscle. You can eat too much protein, but it's very, very difficult. So why is protein important for, obviously for a bodybuilder's strength gain, but for diabetes reversal, for just general weight loss for somebody who doesn't want to look like He-Man?
It's funny, but actually for a diabetic who wants to increase muscle mass, they are super afraid of protein, and it's actually more difficult for someone that has diabetes to gain muscle, because they're very inefficient at creating muscle from protein because of all the processes being insulin resistant. So diabetic actually needs a little bit more protein than someone that hasn't diabetes to get the same results.
Yeah. So effectively, the protein has been converted to glucose, and excess gluconeogenesis means it's all being leached through the liver into the bloodstream. And if they try to avoid protein, what you see, even the Rabenhaven and Simpson paper talks about, that if people lower their protein, they end up craving more protein. So if you're trying to avoid protein, then you end up craving more food overall, and you end up more obese and more insulin resistant by avoiding the protein. And you need to focus on a higher percentage of protein, which is really central to basically fat as a lever. I suppose I've got a chart here. This is our analysis of protein satiety. So most people are down here at 12 or 15. I suppose what we're saying is just incrementally increase that until you get results. And you guys talk about using fat as a lever, which is really a great concept. So if you need the fuel, you need a little bit more fat. If you've got fat on your body, you need to dial back the dietary fat.
Exactly. And yeah, like for example, someone that is pretty lean and wants to maintain or be at optimal performance, of course, likely your fat, talking about it in grams, is going to be higher or about equal in worst cases than your protein intake. But yes, as the leaner you are, the more dietary fat you need. Again, we're talking about the
Mm,
percent of the calories that you need from this macronutrient, energy wise. But if you have already all that energy
mm,
in your body as body fat, then you
mm,
don't need that much exogenous energy to put it in a
mm.
way. And
Yeah.
and and protein really should never be seen um, as an energy source. Protein, the purpose of protein is really not energy. You
Mm.
can obtain energy from protein, but it's not an efficient process.
Yeah. Yeah. So your body says, "Hey, that protein's really hard to convert to ATP. Let's crave the donuts and the fat and carbs together, which is incredibly low satiety and gives you lots of energy really quickly." But
And
people who are really obese tend to
write
go
something up,
for
which is very
sorry.
important. This inefficiency when using protein as energy also has an advantage when you
Mm,
want to lose body fat, which
mm,
is uh, by reducing your dietary fat intake, maintaining your carbs low, and having protein in some cases, which is basically what the lean gains method proposes apart from fasting
mm,
by Martin Berkan, is having your protein intake be at or above 50% of your energy. Why? Because you are in here indeed forcing a state of gluconeogenesis, but
mm,
for the purpose of having an efficient substrate of energy, which is protein, be your main source of energy. So I don't
mm,
know if you're getting what I'm the point I'm trying to make.
mm,
You are ramping up a very inefficient process of energy for the sake of increasing fat burning.
mm,
You're making your body on purpose inefficient at obtaining energy
mm.
so that you are forced to burn your own body fat.
Yeah, and what we see in the data from satiety analysis is a high percentage of protein just leads to a much greater satiety. It's really hard to overeat those foods, and the calorie intake drops. And it's really not just down the protein shakes, but it's more let's focus on foods with a high dietary induced thermogenesis, which are harder to process. So that's less processed foods, maybe
Exactly.
even fibrous veggies and the like. Which it's not the magic of protein, but it's the magic of it's more difficult for your body to process it. So your appetite switches off and starts to use your body fat. But if there's all this amazing hyperpalatable processed food around, the body just goes, yeah, let's eat as much as we can because this is great and winter must be coming. So yeah.
Exactly. And small parenthesis here, when we say high protein, doesn't mean like you were saying eat or drink protein shake. It
Mm,
does work with protein shakes because it's absorbed super fast.
mm,
And I think, yeah, you've seen it also as well with people who do your courses and
mm,
your protocol.
mm,
But well, it happens a lot with our clients, especially females. When we give them their calories, I know some people are like thinking we put everyone in starvation diets. We only when people have a concrete goal, of course, it's best to follow a caloric target because first you have a set date and you're paying for results.
mm,
You can also obtain a lot of these results by not tracking. I myself haven't tracked since last year, and I continue
yeah,
to lose weight, but I eat the same food every day, or
mm,
about the same formula of food, certain combinations. So you can track or you cannot track. It really depends on how strict you want to be and how, in a way, familiar you are with your foods. You are still tracking without tracking,
mm,
but you know
yeah,
the numbers in your head. But
yeah,
again, different types of people react better to different types of dieting. But
mm,
what I wanted to say here is that um, what a lot of things that we experience with people is when you give them numbers and a certain goal, they are resistant because they think that eating so few calories to a point is going to be they're going to be hungry all the time. But
mm,
once you change the equation of eating whole foods, if I
mm,
tell you to eat 120 grams of protein with 30 grams of carbs,
mm,
but everything has to be real food, right? Like
mm,
meat, veggies, everything has to be cooked by yourself. In the end, it's a lot of food. And,
Again, how can I eat all this food? It's massive.
exactly. And we get two males. First male is, I'm going to die and starve with so few calories and things like that. And then the next mail we get is, I'm not able to finish all this food. It's way too much food. And like, so it's in a way, first it's liberating and it's magic because you're not hungry.
Yeah.
And that's when you really start to realize that, as you know, it's about changing habits and changing how you prepare the meals. And satiety is, yeah, it depends on the macros, but also on the origin of the food. If you're not really missing nutrients, your body works in your favor. If you are missing a lot of key nutrients and just eating shakes or things that you think are healthy but are overly processed, sometimes it doesn't work like we want to.
Yeah. So what sort of protein goals? One of the most popular questions was how much protein does somebody need in terms of grams per kilogram lean body mass, or and how does that vary for men, women versus older, younger, fitter, more obese?
So the general, like, I always like to go more in depth and depending on the context of each person. But as a generalization, what I could say is I'd like to have people stay at least at 0.8 grams per lean pound.
Yep.
And then increase gradually or depending based on different factors. First, what's your body fat? If you have lots of body fat, I'd rather you be on a higher level of protein because satiety. If I have you on less protein, it's going to be less amount of food, right? So more protein means a little bit more satiety. And I'm not saying 200 grams of protein or 300. No, like increasing maybe to 1 gram or 1.2, depending, it adds a lot more volume. That's one thing. The other is, okay, if you are over 40 years old, we're also reviewing that you may have leucine resistance, which means that we need a little bit more of protein to get the same results as someone that is younger. If you are a diabetic, also, it means that you have, in a way, leucine resistance or anabolic resistance. So we also need to increase protein a little bit. And if you're strength training, then we increase a little bit more protein also on days that you train. In all, I'd say that it's, again, the lowest bracket would be 0.8 and the highest would be on average 1.2, maybe up to 1.5 if you are doing a very low caloric diet. But in between 0.8, 1.2 is where we normally place people.
Yeah. So if you're losing weight really quickly, you need to actually eat more protein to preserve that lean body mass as you're losing weight.
Also, because people think that faster is better. And there are several studies that show both in bodybuilders, which are basically your gold standard for how much you can lose weight, you can lose without losing lean mass, is about 2% of your total weight per week. If you're losing, exactly, and if you're losing much more than that, because some people lose 10 pounds or some other 5 or some other like even half a pound, and they compare with the people that are losing more, and they think that they're doing something wrong. But when you put that in percentages related to your own weight, that's when you see if they're actually doing great or not going as fast as they should, depending. Because also, again, if you already have, let's say, 12% body fat, your percentage of fat loss will be much slower or should be much slower than someone that has 40% body fat. If you go over that rate of fat loss, what it means is that you are also losing lean mass, and that's not the kind of weight you want to lose.
And once you lose the lean mass, the rebound hunger is huge, and it's hard to stay that
hungry. It's not as easy as people think to build or rebuild lean mass. Like if you lost a little bit of lean mass because you didn't train for a couple of months, there's a thing called muscle memory, and you still have it there. It's just that the muscle became a little bit smaller because of disuse, which is totally different to lose muscle because your body needs the amino acids and you're not feeding them. And this is something, a very important topic that people don't understand. Your body can store glycogen, the carbs, in the liver and in your muscles. Your body can store fat almost indefinitely, of course, in body fat. That's why we get fat. We really don't have a place to store amino acids. Even though there's something called the amino acid pool, It's just like 5 grams, and it's something that
Very
is
small.
circulating in the bloodstream consistently. But our body doesn't have a place to store amino acids, and we do need a certain amount of aminos every day, because protein is not just for muscle. Basically, every day we die and we rebuild all our cells, skin, brain, organs, blood cells, enzymes, hormones, everything needs to be
Neurotransmitters, to avoid depression, serotonin, everything we need in our brain is based on protein amino acids.
Exactly. And then what happens if you don't get the necessary amount is because our body doesn't have a place to store that. What happens is that the protein is assimilated what it can as muscle tissue. So if you don't feed enough protein, your body takes the amino acid it needs from your muscles, right? That's basically what happens. So, and then also another important thing is that only about 10% of the protein that you ingest, and then outside of your daily bodily needs, it's going to be used toward muscle building. It's not that if you eat like 50 grams of protein from a steak, that goes to your bicep. No. First, it's used for all your daily needs. And then if there's something left, then your body, and of course, if you train, then your body will say, okay, I'm going to grow a little bit my biceps, because growing muscle is not a priority for your body. It's actually at the end of the priorities.
Yeah, and Jamie made a comment in the comments that you also need to do resistance training as well. And if you're dieting, if you're restricting calories, then the body's going to go, hey, I need to offload all this metabolically expensive muscle so it can survive. If you're not telling your body, hey, we need to keep that stuff. And so it's definitely critical to train in the context of all this and do something. I suppose some people go, yeah, I'm going to do this massive resistance training program, and then straight away fall off the wagon because it's just too hard to maintain. But just incrementally building habits. You guys are all about building long-term habits of a sustainable approach. Yeah, that's what I've found I love. What about training and protein requirements? I find that your appetite for protein just increases when you're training heavier, more volume. You just need that to recover, and your body goes after it. So the body's got an amazing appetite for protein. And then the challenge at that point is not to reach for the energy dense fat and carb foods together at that point to refuel. So you want to talk about that, the criticalness of protein in training?
Well, here's the deal again. It really boils to understanding the basics. People think that when they're training, they need. I hate this word. Bulking. And you see someone that's 20% as a male or 25%, and says, "I want to bulk." The only thing that you need to gain muscle, really, and I'm going to break it down as simple as possible, is strength training, of course, because it creates the stimulus. Then, of course, you need the protein. Depending on how much you're eating, you may need more, or you may not even need more at all. Again, it really depends. Remember that I said in between 0.8 to 1.2, according to your lean mass. If you're already at the high end, probably you don't need more. You maybe just need strength training. And then, of course, you need energy. People think you need carbs. No, you need energy. The energy can come from, the carbs, or it can come from fat. But then remember, fat can be either come from your plate or from your body fat. The actual energy requirements for a 2-hour session of strength training, which most people normally do, I'm not talking about a recreational athlete, basically 90% of the population, they think that, I'm going to train, I need 1,000 extra calories a day. No, you need in between 150 up to 250, or an average 200 calories. So it's less than 5% extra. And if you are, again, over 20% body fat, you likely don't need anything at all. So if you're you can very much, and this is another myth, you can indeed gain muscle by eating at a deficit, strength training, as long as your protein intake is adequate you're following a well-established training program where you are following progression,
Mm.
and and you have enough body fat. And if
Mm.
you don't have enough body fat, well, just eat a little bit more energy, right?
Mm.
That's it.
So in terms of what does this food look like, what do you recommend most people start out trying to eat? What are the most common foods that you recommend people to eat on the Ketogains type protocol, and how does it change if you're trying to be active or lose body fat? I've got this picture from your previous presentation that I stole.
But that's very much about it. I just would add some more vegetables, but very much if I had like, let's say that I went to an island and I had like 10 items of the food that I would be eating for the rest of my life. I would take eggs, I would take avocado, I would take either salmon or sardines. I would take probably broccoli or green beans. Uh, like that's probably the list. Maybe for zinc. You are the master on this. I'm missing something. But, maybe oysters could use some
Yeah.
take care of that. But as long as I get magnesium, the electrolytes, some DHA, omega fatty acids, protein, I think I'm going to hit most of my nutrition
Yeah.
needs.
And more fat if you're more active, and less fat if you've got body fat to burn, basically. So you mentioned nutrients, and you guys talk a lot about electrolytes. And so you want to talk about the importance of nutrient density and nutrients in your diet, and why that's important for energy production and performance and hydration?
For sure. Like we talk a lot about macros, and a few years ago, maybe a little bit more, a very popular concept, especially for lean people and bodybuilders or people that went to strength training, was if it fits your macros. And that's a very easy to understand way, but it was in a way, let's call it how do I explain it? Like the idea was sound, but the interpretation was taken way too far. So yeah, hitting my macros on protein, fat, and carbs. But what happened is that people found ways to trick the program and ended up eating Twinkies. And what happens now with ketogenic diets, you see people, yeah, you're eating keto, but you're eating fat bombs and cheesecakes and things like that, which are really devoid of nutrients. And that's why I tend to say a lot, change habits, not ingredients. It's not just changing one thing for the other. A lot of people, you see how they eat and how they got super unhealthy, right? And they are eating cheesecake and chocolate and pastry and things like that. They come to keto, and the first thing they ask is for recipes to keep eating the same way with different ingredients.
And all the fat bombs and hyper palatable junk food, basically.
They are doing nothing to change their lifestyle. They're just and they're still stuck in the idea of super hyper palatable foods. I'm not saying that that's inherently bad. What I'm saying is when you change to nutrient dense foods, everything starts to click into place. And if you look at what paleo and primal and carnivore and even some whole food vegan diets and all of them have in common is they are taking away hyper palatable, hyper processed foods. You're going back to, it's not about what you should eat, but mostly what you should not eat.
Yeah.
And that's really the magic, and that's what Ketogains has evolved to. I frankly, and a lot of our clients will find, I don't put everyone in keto. Actually, my goal is more so metabolic flexibility. If you like ketosis and you perform well here, perfect. But what I always try to teach people is let's focus on protein, let's focus on whole foods, let's focus on getting healthy fats, and eventually you will find that you can tolerate a little bit more carbs. And we will increase if you want, and if your performance requires, or whatever your decision is, more carbs but from healthy sources. I'm not going to give you a donut. I'm going to give you more potato, more fruit, more different types of vegetables, and we see if you can tolerate them, if you like them, etc., etc., etc. So it's about Yeah, eventually, if you want to have cake, that's up to you. But what I want to is to get you more healthy and
Mm.
metabolically flexible,
Yes.
so that you can perform better in both all facets of your life: mind, health, well-being, etc. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing you mentioned all those different dietary terms and keto and paleo and vegan, and everybody, like, as I mentioned in the book, like, they start out with great intentions and work really well when you apply them simply. But when you start saying, is this paleo, paleo comfort foods come out, and all of a sudden you're mixing dates, honey, and almond flour, which is paleo, but it tastes just like a donut. You can chow it down. And the same, like, plant-based is such a wide open term that means nothing really, because plant-based could be whole food plant-based, and those people struggle to gain weight and often get very skinny because there's such little energy in them. But plant-based is every donut, every processed food in the center aisles at the shops that you should avoid at the same time. So you've got to, nutrient density and adequate protein has to be central to your definition of food.
Exactly. If you eat enough protein, like you cannot get that much protein on plants. Like if you're eating whole foods, it's basically you're gonna be like a gorilla sitting all day, eating tons of food just to get. I would love to see someone getting actually, let's say, 120 grams of protein a day from just vegetables, and they have to be at most boiled without legumes. Like, show me an example of the amount of food, and I'm sure it's going to cover an entire table. And you're going to have to spend basically at least 6 hours of your day sitting and eating, and probably another 2 shitting, right? So it's a lot of wasted time, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then if you do, and again, if you like to follow your life like that, I have nothing against vegans or vegetarians. Like, more power to you, as long as you do it properly and you're getting the results you want. Perfect. I see with people that follow a more mix between what you do and we do, which is more focused on nutrient density and a little bit of fasting if you like it and you can apply it to your life. Basically, you're free. You spend 2 hours a day eating, and then you spend the rest working, training, being more productive. Again, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just trying to be objective, showing different approaches, and you can do whatever you want, and of course, what works for you in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing you have to consider with a plant-based protein intake is that protein is less bioavailable, and the protein density, like the amount of protein per calories, is very low. The protein percentage, so you have to eat a ton of that protein to actually get the protein you need to actually build muscle. So it's definitely not off limits, and is possible maybe with your soy protein powders or whatever, but they come with their challenges as well. But yeah, it's definitely harder, and you have to be more intelligent. So you mentioned fasting. Ketogains isn't massive advocates of extended fasting, but I know you sort of practice a version of intermittent fasting. What's your experience, and what works for you?
A lot of people think that we are anti-fasting, and again, it's a little bit of lost in translation. Like, hell, I did an experiment on doing OMAD for more than 1 year. I was eating 1 meal a day, so it's not. Here's something, just an explanation. I am not someone that just talks because talking. You've known me for a while, and I like to experiment with certain objectives and see by metrics how it works and what it did for me, and then I don't want people, especially because I'm getting paid to give people results. I'm not going to be experimenting with clients. I want to give you the best results, and what I'll do is, that's one of the reasons why I study a lot. I want to have the studies, and then I also want to have a practical application. How do I translate those studies into actionable steps and things that actually get you results? So yeah, fasting has a lot of benefits, but people, very much like with ketogenic diets, will go to far conclusions that are not really either true, or they're jumping conclusions, as you say in English. It's like A and B does not equal C. That's not how it works. Even though in paper it sounds like that, it's not. One of, for example, the biggest myths is that you can build muscle with fasting. And just because, you increase human growth hormone, the name is a misnomer. What it actually does the human growth hormone in adults, and when you create this endogenously, meaning that your body produces it, it doesn't mean that you will build muscle. What it's actually doing is shaving lean mass from your body. We talked about this before. Your body is fasting and you are training, you're giving a stress and a stimulus. Your body needs to repair not only your muscles, and we said muscles are the end of the priority.
Mm.
You are not giving your body energy and food and nutrients. The body, what it will do is it will take some energy from the fat, it will take some glucose from the muscles if you have it, or if you don't, it will produce it, and it takes some amino acids from your own muscles.
Mm.
So basically, it's like how I like to explain it is, imagine that you have a house and you want to build an extra room. You didn't want to buy cement or bricks, so you decide to break one wall from your own house to create the next room. So did you actually build something? No, you didn't. Just moving the blocks, and in the process of breaking the wall to build the other one, you also lost some bricks that cannot be like you actually ended up worse. Make sense? Because you didn't buy any new blocks. The best thing would be to buy new blocks and have them in reserve, and then you can build the new wall. And that's actually how muscle building works. It's a building is both catabolic and anabolic, and the end result is is from a process which is muscle building breakdown and then muscle building synthesis. So the net result has to be positive for you to actually build muscle. And this is why fasted training is not optimal. And again, the key word here is optimal. It doesn't mean that under certain situations you cannot build muscle if you train fasted. But if you're already doing something that's even me being one of the more proponent persons on ketogenic diet for strength training, strength training on keto may not be the optimal way to build muscle. Probably eating more carbs is going to be better. Okay, I agree with that. Now you're doing something that, okay, let's say that it's subpar, and then you add fasting to it, and then you add other things that people do. Okay, you're making something that it's not at 100%, then you're doing it at an 80%. You're not eating adequate protein even afterwards because you're afraid of cancer or other things. So then instead of getting 95% of the results, you're getting 70% of the results, or 60, or even nothing. And then you wonder why you're training so hard and not getting results.
Yeah.
Make sense?
You see so many people fasting for days on end, and then at that point you're just so hungry you just choose whatever you can. And I think, you mentioned OMAD, but it seems most people struggle to get adequate protein. You talked about
also
1.2. It's difficult in one meal. You need at least 2 meals a day on a regular basis, and as you said, balance between enough deprivation and fat loss with enough refeeding with nutrient density. So you definitely need to find that balance. So you basically eat 2 meals a day generally now, or?
What we propose for most clients is, and this is also that's supported by studies, is to follow the lean gains approach, which is 16 hours of fasting plus 8 hours of feeding. And you can, it doesn't matter if it's 17 or if it's 14, like it's just the average. So what I normally do myself, and I propose to a lot of clients, is, okay, let's say you're fasting, break the fast with a Ketogains pre-workout, which is basically 25-30 grams of whey protein. This is important because we want a fast absorbing protein here. This is when you want to spike a little bit your insulin before training. And why before and not after? Because a lot of people say, no, the protein should come after. No, because let's remember that protein is going to be digested, and it's not immediately. It takes, the fastest protein is whey protein, and it takes about an hour for each 10 grams. So if you take it, let's say 30 minutes before training, and an average training session lasts between 60 to 120 minutes, by the time that you finish training, the protein will be more so available in your bloodstream. And what we want to do is synchronize the MPS from the protein, the muscle protein synthesis, with the stimulus from training and the protein. So this is called protein syncing or protein synchronization. So you're giving, let's say, the bricks to the workers, going back to the house analogy, just on time, just when you need it, right?
And it's ready for the recovery period rather than eating the protein, digesting it, and 2 hours later it's trying to recover after you work out 3 hours ago.
That's it. And then, of course, later have a big meal. And again, people say, but I'm having a big meal before or after training. That's great, but that protein will reach your bloodstream probably 6 to 8 hours after. Makes sense? Yeah. What I want is to have, yeah.
What do you use to track progress in terms of lean muscle mass, and you track body fat, weight, waist, and I know you use I forgot the name of it to track your body fat on a regular basis. But what do most people find most useful to track their progress?
What do most people find more usable, or
to track, track weight, body fat?
Mostly because we have most of our trainings online and different parts of the world. The easiest way that we've seen to get a feasible way of achieving results is with tape measurements and using the Navy fat system. Very much measure your hip, waist, neck, of course your weight, and pictures. So with that, we can extrapolate and we get a solid idea of where the client is heading at. Because if you just use one measure, let's say weight can be confounding. If you drank a lot of water, if your electrolytes are off, if you're training, like what you weigh on a given day is not it doesn't mean that you are gaining fat or losing fat. Like if you eat a lot, like basically if I eat half a kilo of meat right now and I weigh myself afterwards, I gain half a kilo. It doesn't mean that I got fatter. It just means that I have half a kilo of meat in my gut, right? And people forget about that, or they think that the scale is judging them and things like that. So it's best to have lots of different measurements, have a trained eye, and then you can check with the client and explain, yeah, you're not losing weight like probably you wanted, but your body fat is down by 2 points, and you're actually looking stronger. And this is something that usually it's more prone for women, because they think that once they reach a certain weight, they're gonna look like they want in their mind's eye, and that's why you have to show them pictures of their progress and measurements. And it's like, yeah, maybe I'm not, or I'm even gaining weight, but I'm looking phenomenal, and now I fit in that dress, even if I weigh more.
Yeah, and potentially weight on the bar and strength improvements is
of course, that's super important as well. Like if you are, some people think I'm not gaining muscle. Well, that's something that's more so in the long road. But if your first squat was 100 pounds and now you're squatting 130, yeah, there are some neurological adaptations, but also that means that you're getting stronger.
Yeah. So one of your little catchphrases is chase results, not ketones, which has triggered a lot of people. But we've all 5 years ago started tracking ketones, and higher was better, and plenty of confusion. And there's this chart here that a lot of people targeted the higher ketones with more fat, etc., etc. What's your experience and what's your recommendation when it comes to tracking ketones for ketosis or a ketogenic diet?
So I have nothing against people chasing ketones in the sense that context. You got into ketosis or you are attracted to the diet because your main goal is fat loss, then we should understand that your main metric for success should be fat loss, not ketones. Because people come to the diet, they forget about their goal, and they get lost in the chasing ketones. And some people say, yeah, but high ketones are better, and they don't understand that ketones are the byproduct of fat burning, not what makes you burn fat. That's important to understand. Another thing to understand is that ketosis, like the level that you have actually in your bloodstream, it varies by various factors. When you're new to the diet, you don't have the metabolic flexibility. You don't have the mitochondrial density. This means that your body doesn't understand or doesn't have it cannot metabolize or use ketones as efficiently as someone that is more a veteran in the diet. right? So I eat a lot of fat right now. What happens with a lot of people is they either get diarrhea, they need liver enzymes or things like that because they don't have, again, they're not prepared to be able to. And yeah, they start to produce more ketones because they're burning that fat, but their body cannot use them efficiently. So what happens is they pee them. That's why they show on the pee sticks at the beginning, and then they don't show because your body went, let's say, to the first phase of ketone adaptation. Then what happens is, yeah, you keep producing ketones, but now your organs and your muscles can start to use them more efficiently. So you produce them and you use them at a more efficient rate. When you are new to the diet, yeah, you produce them, your body cannot use them. Very much like when you're insulin resistant. What happens? You eat a carb, your body cannot use the carbs, and you have increased blood sugar. The same happens with ketones. You're producing a lot of ketones, your body cannot use them efficiently, so you have lots of ketones. Over time, your body adapts to using them, and then you don't have them as high as before. And this is something that you see with people that have done the diet efficiently for, I cannot say how much, how long, but I've seen it with people over 4 years, over 3, or in my case, Tyler, Rob Wolf, Mike Sisson, I think as well. You prick yourself on the finger and you consistently show a certain amount of ketones. It doesn't matter, well, in my case, if I fast, if I eat a lot of fat, if I don't eat a lot of fat, I'm consistently in between 0.4 and 0.6, but in between those numbers, depending, no matter what I do, because my body is very well adapted to being in a low carb ketogenic state.
Yeah, so it becomes not a very useful indicator of whether you're doing the right thing or whether you should eat more or less fat or how you change your diet to optimize it. So just
what I see, people come to the diet, they think that they need the ketones and that more is better. And if they don't show ketones, they are not getting the results. And it becomes, because they don't understand all these little nuances, which are very hard to understand. They start to either eat more fat, which becomes counterproductive for losing body fat, or even buying exogenous ketones. Again, I have nothing against them. They're very useful for treating certain diseases or like epilepsy or certain cancers or for performance. And there are a lot of interesting research topics on them. But again, for the topic of fat loss, those things are not really needed.
Yeah. And from a personal fat threshold point of view, your body, you empty the sponge of all the storage in your body, your fat, your liver, and it can then hold it in where it's meant to be held, not overflow into your bloodstream. So you don't see elevated ketones, free fatty acids, or glucose. And if you look at like my wife is type 1 diabetic, obviously, and if you don't give her insulin, everything just flows into the bloodstream, which is not a great situation to be. So at the other extreme, once you become metabolically healthy, more metabolically flexible, and even you tend to see lower blood ketones. And even you look at the Inuit, potentially they've adapted to having less ketones, even though they're on a ketogenic diet, which is interesting. So yeah, sky high optimal ketone levels. Something I wish we could stop talking about and focus on results and not chasing the ketones with more fat, because that just seems to be a massive area of confusion for a lot of people.
And again, I have nothing against people that want to increase ketones. Like, I know there's a very interesting area for more that warrants more study, because having high ketones for certain people does decrease hunger. And if you take exogenous ketones, a lot of people do, they suggest it suppresses hunger. I've seen that, but it doesn't do it always. And what I don't like is that people, especially, again, remember that I actually treat people, I coach people, and it's very easy to say things, from being a keyboard warrior just by reading studies and not being there and getting paid to deliver results and not talking with clients almost on an everyday basis. Understand that someone that has a lot of fat to lose and that has an OCD behavior or binge eating, bulimia, etc. And again, I'm not speaking just through my feet. I've been there. I know what it feels to be there. I have seen people that binge, have ketones because they think it will get them faster into ketosis, and it ends becoming a self-defeating circle. You've seen it as well. They think that they're not in ketosis because they are ingesting ketos. No, you're in a state of false ketosis. You are just ingesting ketos. You're not producing them. It's different.
Yeah.
And
Exogenous versus endogenous ketosis. Of where is that fat coming from? Is it from your body or from your diet?
And then because people are so anxious, I would talk with this with Tyler as well. When you have this type of personality, you're just never going to be satisfied. It doesn't matter if you drank 1 liter of exogenous ketones. You're like, even if your hunger is maybe suppressed, it's not eliminated. Right? So again, I'm not saying I'm not against that, because you've seen the discussions we've had with people that are, always going into that end, that ketosis isn't a goal because this and that and that. Very much like you've seen studies that say that ketosis has no metabolic advantage over other diets because people lose the same amount of fat, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's on a study. In free living conditions, and I think that you'll probably agree, in a whole food diet, probably for a certain subset of people, is more sustainable versus doing another diet, because it takes hunger away, it keeps them fuller, it adds more nutrient density to their diet, et cetera. So they're doing better choices, right? Again, in a paper, one thing is what a paper says. Another thing is the practical approach, and in free living conditions, what actually happens.
Yeah, we definitely see when people focus on nutrient density, adequate protein, everything else just falls into place. And I finally get it. If I just, focus on food quality, then quantity and energy levels and everything just falls into place. And
exactly, and
amazing as you get a higher percentage of protein, it just, the appetite falls off a cliff, and they get endogenous ketosis as they burn their body fat.
Totally, and we've seen it with 8 years that we've been running groups. What happens again with clients, both paying clients and people doing following the protocol on their own? You see a lot of Facebook groups that say certain things, and you see the same pitfalls, and you see people staying stuck there for years. And then you see people, when they change certain things, that's when they start to get real results. And I'm not saying it's particular to Ketogains. That I've seen it in a lot of groups that focus again more on nutrient density. It can be it can be paleo, it can be, but that's a common factor: eating real food and not focusing on eating comfort food.
Yeah, definitely. So in Ketogains, what are the things that most people have to most often unlearn that they've believed? So dietary belief is really strong. It's like a religious, you belong to a crowd, and then you come and go, okay, these people are getting amazing results in Ketogains. What do they have to unlearn to actually make progress? What are maybe the top 3 things?
So I'd say very much the graphic you showed at the beginning, which is, I'd like to say, like, protein is the goal. Focus on protein, and especially whole food protein, not on fat. Carbs, yes, they are a limit. Here we have 30 grams, but it boils down to your metabolic flexibility. Some people stay, like, if you're a small frame person that it's overweight, okay, let's start you on the lower end, but let's make those carbs not for fat bombs and things like that, because I see a lot of people gaming the system. They say, I have 50 grams of carbs, or 40 or 30, I'm going to have low carb ice cream. Right? No. Use those carbs for nutrient dense foods: green beans, zucchini, chayote, whatever that's going to give you more bang for your nutrition buck, right?
30 grams of carbs from spinach or broccoli is a massive amount of food.
Totally on board with that. And then even some liver and things like that are super, like, nutrition bombs, right? Like, if I'm going to have one day that I'm going to eat like 100 or 80 grams of carbs, I'd rather eat like a liver that's super nutrient dense, and it's higher on carbs, but it's different, right? I never try to be a zealot, but again, it's like coming from a business and marketing background. I probably heard this saying as well, is macros are like money, right? Use your macro and micronutrient targets to get the best profile or your best investment regarding health. And it doesn't mean that you cannot have a vacation. Like, you're going to a vacation, you saved and you spend, I don't know, $2,000 on a vacation, and you can drink and whatever. But when you get back, you have to pay that budget. You have to pay your credit card. The same happens with nutrition. You want to have, like, you've been saving and you want to have that cake, have it, then come back and continue onward as if nothing happened because you saved for it, right? But don't spend those macros in a donut just because you have 30 grams of carbs a day. No, spend them in things that are actually going, invest in your health. That's what it boils down to.
Nutrient density is very much a cost-benefit analysis of how many nutrients you need per calorie, and if you're trying to lose the weight, then you need to fit those same nutrients in less calories.
You've seen, this is something that's very interesting, and I'd like to take you on the challenge to finding this and maybe a conjoined blog post on this.
Yeah, sure, man.
There's this myth about eating less than 1,200 calories.
Yep.
Okay. So I've done some research on where this comes from, because there's not a clinical, it's very much like breakfast is the most important part of a meal of the day, that everybody, even doctors, say it. And we know that this is a slogan from General Mills. It's not something actually supported or created by science. So the 1,200 calories myth, people always say, the first thing that I see about it is that you eat below that, you're going to wreck your metabolism. But it doesn't give context. 1,200 calories is not like the low bracket. What happens if you're a 5-foot midget? 1,200 calories? Or what happens if you are 6 foot? Do you need 1,200 calories? Of course not. Someone that is 6 foot maybe needs 2,000 calories, whereas let's hope the average height in Mexico for a small frame woman is maybe 4'9". So what happens if I stick to that dogma and give a client 1,200 calories? They don't lose weight because that's actually their maintenance calories. And I've had clients that actually gain, because we're talking about, I'm not discriminating, but there are very small frame women over 60. They don't need that many calories because they're very small.
We definitely see some people on the lower end who are smaller and less active or older and thriving on, if they get adequate nutrients and protein in that 1,000 calories a day, that they're thriving and losing weight. And the metabolic rate doesn't slow. But if you're doing extended fasting and refeeding on fat bombs and not active and not building muscle, then the metabolic rate just slows and they're not losing fat anymore. And they go, no, I'm eating this minuscule amount of energy and I'm not losing weight, because you potentially metabolism has slowed, but that's because you're not active, you're not eating the protein to stimulate your muscle and grow the muscle and feel energized, because you've got your mitochondria fired up with all the nutrients it needs to thrive.
It has more to do with a safe mode mechanism that our body has, which is called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That because you're not getting a lot of calories, your body is wise, and it says, probably in the environment, there's food scarcity. We're in winter, so let's save energy by becoming less active. So it's actually a process that our body has, but doesn't really mean that you are metabolically damaged, because the inverse happens when you binge. For example, you spontaneously get more energy, and something that people don't notice, but it boils down to some people even having tics or tapping your feet on the ground quick, things like that. But again, going back to the 1,200 idea for a blog, the more investigated and as far as I've gone through this rabbit hole is because there were some certain recommendations, and I had to dig the paper on what would be the lowest amount of calories for an American woman to get using the standard American diet to reach the RDAs. So that would be the 1,200 calories. And so it doesn't have to do anything with your body going into starvation mode or so. It's more so that you get eating McDonald's and Wendy's and things like that at least the minimal amount of certain nutrients. So if you eat 500 calories, of course, I'm not advocating people eat 500 calories, but if you eat 500 calories from super nutrient dense food, which can be done, we've seen it with your nutrient optimizer, you can meet and get 100 or 200% from most key nutrients.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that this is sustainable or suggested, but you will not get a deficiency. And this is basically what some doctors do, and this is when they are preparing a client for a certain medical interventions, most bariatric surgery. They take care of the patient so that it doesn't have any nutrient deficiency. They feed them at least the minimum amount of protein via protein powders and so on and so forth, and the client is perfect in the sense of how they're no nutrient deficiency. Yeah, they're not comfortable because nobody wants to not eat anything. It's again, they're not metabolically wrecked, and it doesn't mean that they're not losing body fat. They are losing a lot of body fat because they're forcing their body to burn what they have left.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely see that as people, like if you're eating 500 calories of donuts or fat bombs, you're going to be absolutely starving, and your metabolism seems to be, anecdotally at least, slowing down, and you're not losing weight, and you're feeling lethargic and cold. But those people who are getting adequate amino acids and nutrients in that lower calorie intake just thrive.
Exactly.
They feel energized, and they're burning the weight, and they says the food's good here, it's not a famine, I'm just going to offload all that excess body fat that I didn't need.
And again, I'm not advocating on eating super low calories. I'm saying it depends on the context. If you have 30%, 40% body fat, you can do this, especially if you're getting, medically supervised or coached by someone, or even by yourself if you know how to do it for a while, then you resume to eating back. But also another important thing that I want people to understand is most of us think that we need more calories than what we really need. Again, this is a myth, like extrapolated that yes, maybe some people need 2,000 calories. But myself, again, I'm 5'6". I myself need in between 17 to 1,800 a day because I'm small. I may have bigger muscle than someone else, but I'm a small framed person. That's what it is. If I ate 3,000 calories, I'm sure I would get fat.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been over an hour. What have you got coming up? You've got LMNT with Rob, and Ketogains just continues to go from strength to strength. You've got at Go Health. What's on the horizon? Heaps of things by the looks of it.
Yeah, so basically, we launched last year at Go Health, which is the right hand of Ketogains, more so a medical practice. I was telling you before, we found that a lot of clients actually do need the help with hormones and things like that. Once you have your diet dialed in, you're doing training, you're doing everything perfect, but you need that extra push. It always pays down to review that with a doctor. And so we partnered with Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, who is an excellent doctor in this area. And it just became a natural process. So we opened a medical practice branch for Ketogains to help our clients get better results. That's one thing. Then, of course, we have with Rob Wolf the partnership with Element and Electrolytes. And we are developing an app, a general fitness and nutrition training app for for the general audience, but mostly we're concentrating on this as we speak.
Yeah, which just Ketogains just keeps growing from strength to strength, which is great. And yeah, thank you for your friendship and your time, and this has been a whole lot of fun, and hopefully help clarify a few things for a few people. And yeah, thanks for everything you do. And
thank you.
Good night.
And I just like to say people that I've also learned a lot from how you break up things and make them more understandable for everyone, because sometimes like I was saying, it's very complicated topics. It's very easy to get confused, right? And explain them. I like to say, if my mother can understand what I'm saying and then apply that, it means that I'm doing the right thing, because we say things and we speak on certain terms that are not really understandable for a lot of people. and you do a great job on dissecting all those little nuances and getting the job done. So awesome, Marty.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll share it on YouTube as well. And yeah, cheers. Thanks, Luis.
Perfect. See you, Marty.